Hello everyone, my name is Brooke Fleshman. I've been in 4-H for the past 13 years and this will be my 5th year in the Franklin County Fashion Board. Today I'm going to be talking to you about hand sewing. What is hand sewing? What do you need? The different techniques and styles, etc. So what is hand sewing? Hand sewing is just using needle, thread, and your hands to sew all of or part of a garment. A few years ago, I actually hand sewed an entire fleece robe because the fleece was too thick to use on my sewing machine, and that was just easier for me at the time. So what do you need to hand sew? You're going to need a pin cushion with pins and a needle, thread, scissors, and of course your fabric. First thing you're going to want to do is thread your needle. Normally when you're doing a bigger piece of fabric, you're only going to want to get your thread ready in 18 to 20 inch sections so that it doesn't tangle or get twisted when you are sewing your garment. Because we're using a smaller piece, I'm going to do 2 or 3 times the length of this to make sure that I have enough and I won't run out. So I'm going to cut this end. This is the end that I cut. I'm going to go all the way down to the other end. And then I'm going to thread my needle. This is a needle that I'm going to use. And then I'm going to put this through the end. Sometimes it'll take you a couple tries to get the hang of it. And then you're going to pull it about 1/3 of the way or half the way down so that it doesn't come out. Then you're going to stick your needle in your pin cushion so that it doesn't roll off the table or become unthreaded while you're making your knot. To make the knot on the other end, there are a couple ways to do it. You can either just make a circle and put the end through, but sometimes your thread can get twisted and that can be a little bit difficult. So what we're going to do today is you're going to stick the end over your index finger and hold it with your thumb. And then you're going to take the other end, wrap it around your index finger and kind of make an X with the thread. So it's going to look like this. There we are. Okay, and then you're going to grab it with your thumb, and then you're going to roll your thumb so that the end of the thread actually goes through the hole, and sometimes you might have to help with that. And then you're going to grab this end, and with one hand, and then with the other hand, you're going to pull this part of the thread while pushing the loop down towards the end of your thread. And then you're going to pull it tight, and then you have your knot. So this is your knot. See, you can't really even see the knot right now because it's so small. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to double the knot because of my fabric type. I need a thicker knot. So I'm just going to do a normal knot, taking this end, pulling it through. This can be a little bit tedious at first, trying to match up the 2 knots so that they actually overlap with each other. I've been sewing basically my entire life, and took me about 10 years to figure out how to do this effectively. So it will take you a little while. So there's my knot. It's nice and thick now. And I'm going to cut off the end right after the knot. And then you are ready to begin with your first stitch. First things first when it comes to hand sewing, you're going to want to press your fabric. This piece specifically is demonstrating a hem. So what you're going to want to do when it comes to a hem is fold up the desired length, iron, and then fold up again and press again. It should stay as is, but add pins for security. You're going to want to have them be far enough down that when you do your stitch, you're not bumping into the pin or poking yourself. The first 2 stitches that we're going to talk about today are hemming stitches. In general, what a hem stitch is a small stitch that hardly shows. You're going to work with the wrong side of your fabric facing up with the bottom of the hem towards you. When you are holding the fabric, you want to hold the hem between your index finger and thumb so that you are nice and secure when stitching. The first stitch of a hem stitch that we're going to be talking about is a slant hem. Your slant hem stitch is going to look a little like this. Your thread is not the part that's actually going to be slanted. It's going to be the needle. That is going to be demonstrated in a few seconds. First, grab your needle, and you're going to want to start by making sure your needle is nice and prepped. You're going to start off by sticking your needle into this little fold right here so that your knot does not stick out. You're going to stick that through, pull all the way until it pulls tight. And then what you're going to do is begin your slant hem stitch. So you're going to start by grabbing a little thread. See how there's just the slightest, there we are, just a single thread. You really want it to be really nice and small so that it doesn't show on the other side when you are finished with your stitch. So we're going to grab that and we're going to go ahead and turn our needle to be straight down. And you're only going to want to go maybe about 1/4 of an inch down. You're going to want to stick your needle through and bring it up. So then you have your thread, and then you're going to continue this process, only when you get your piece of thread, right above where you just came out. And then you're going to kind of go about 1/2 inch, go at a diagonal, and come out right in line with your last stitch. So you're going to come out right in line with your last stitch. And then you're going to want your thread to be on the fabric. Pull tight, not too tight that it puckers up, but about that tight. Okay? And then you're just going to repeat that process. So you're going to go down, grab a thread, go about 1/2 inch, go down with your needle so that it pops out at about the same spot, and then pull it through all the way. There you go. Again, grabbing a piece of thread, going about 1/2 inch, coming down and out, and pulling tight. All right, what we're going to want to do now before we continue is flip it over and make sure that we can't see the thread. So you really can't see any of the thread, which is perfect. So you know that you're doing it right. You're not going too deep into the fabric to grab your thread that it pops out on the other side. So we're just going to continue this all the way to the end. Now when you get to the end, you're going to stick your needle through, pull tight. You can actually pull out your pins as you go along, if that would be easier for you. Pull tight. And then what you're going to want to do is just make 2 to 3 loops in the exact same spot to overlap to make your fabric secure. So grab a piece, go straight down, come out right where this went in, and then you're going to do that again. So grab a little piece, go straight down, come up, loop around, and then we're going to do one more. And then I like to stick my needle through here and come out this little hole, and then pull so that when I cut it, the excess thread is in the little hole right there. So you can go ahead and cut your thread. And then there is your slant hem stitch. Does not have to be perfect. This is a loose stitch. The main goal is to not have your thread showing on the other side. And there you are, a slant stitch. So the next stitch we're going to be talking about is actually kind of a two-in-one. One is a hem stitch, which is the slip stitch, and one is more for folds or edges, which is the invisible stitch. I'm going to be showing you what the difference is. So an invisible stitch is a much closer together stitch. See how there you can see the white of the thread, and there's much smaller of a very small gap, only about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch gap. Now a slip stitch is going to be a little bit longer of a stitch, but it's going to provide pretty much the same purpose, only on a different style. So this is going to be about 1/2 inch of a gap between each of the stitches. So this is a slip stitch, and down here we have an invisible stitch. So when you look at them from the top, this is just going to be a tighter stitch, and this is just going to be a little bit looser. The invisible stitch is obviously what we're going to use on folds, which you're going to see more than you will on hems, which is what you will use the slip stitch for. Now I will be teaching you how to do it. So of course what you're going to want to do first is press your fabric. I'm going to be working on a fold, and then I have put pins in just for security. Then you're going to want to get your thread and needle. First, I'm going to start off by showing you how to do the slip stitch. The slip stitch is the smaller of the stitches, and it is a hem stitch. To start off, you're going to stick the end in the hole and bring it up. You want it to be nice and close to the end. And you're going to pull through so that the knot hits, pull tight, there you go. All right, so next we are going to, I'm going to cut off these frays. If you have any frays, feel free to cut them off because it can be a distraction and it can get in your way when you are trying to stitch. Be careful not to cut your thread. All right, I'm going to pick up my needle again, and we're going to go in with a slip stitch. So like I said, the slip stitch is the bigger of the stitches, and it is a hem stitch. So you're actually going to go in on the other side of the fold than we came out, and you're going to go about 1/2 inch down and come out. Pull it out, and then pull tight. You actually want to pull tighter than we did on the slant hem because you really don't want that thread to show at all. You don't want to pull so tight that it makes a pucker in the fabric, but you want it to be tight enough that it doesn't show. So after you've come out after that 1/2 inch, you're going to go into the other side, and just like our slant hem, you're going to pick up just the smallest piece of thread. And then you're going to pull that out, and then you're going to go in on the other side. See this little stitch right here? Pull that tight so you can't see it, but that will happen in just a second. See right here, I kind of went diagonal. You really want to make sure that you're going straight across so that when you pull tight, there is no thread showing. When you're using thread, you want to make sure that it is about the same color of the fabric that you're using. I'm using a more differing thread color right now for the point of being able to see it easier. So like I said, you're going to go in on the other side, go about 1/2 inch down again, and then come out. Want to make sure you're staying in that little tunnel that we made. Go about 1/2 inch and come out. Pull that. And then when you pull that, you're going to see that this really closes up. See, you can't even see where we did that earlier. it's really gonna close up, and it really is going to be invisible. As a slip stitch, you're gonna continue grabbing a little piece, pulling, making sure that it's pulling tight, and then you're gonna go in to the opposite side, go about 1/2 inch down. Perfect. So that is going to be your slip stitch. Now I'm going to show you how to do the invisible stitch. The invisible stitch is going to be a much smaller stitch, and when you go through your tunnel, you're only going to go through about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, so that it's a much tighter of a stitch. So you're still going to go across, grab a little piece of thread from that fabric, pull tight, but then when you go into your tunnel, like I said, you're only going to go about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch. See how much shorter that is? Then you're going to pull tight. You're going to just repeat. So you're going to go in to the other side, grab a piece of thread, pull, and then go in, only about 1/4 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch, pull, and there you go. Alright, we're going to pretend now that we are at the end. So to finish off the fabric, you're just going to do 2 to 3 really small stitches. So you're just going to grab a little piece of thread, come up, pull tight, and then you're going to go the other side, grab the tiniest thread, come up, pull tight, and then we're going to do 2 more. If I was actually at the end, I would do the same thing that I did on the slant stitch, and I would poke my needle through and come out this end and pull all the way and then cut it. And that is how you do a slip stitch hem and an invisible stitch. The next stitch we're going to be talking about is the basting stitch. A basting stitch is used to hold 2 or more pieces of fabric together until they are machine stitched. As you can see, these are fairly large stitches because they will be pulled out once your fabric is more secure with the actual machine stitch. Make sure to follow along with your pattern to know where on the fabric you should have your basting line. We're going to prepare the fabric by putting it flat on the table and pinning it together. Next, you're going to want to get your needle. We're going to hold this with my left hand because I'm right-handed. We're going to begin with sticking the needle up from the back side, pulling it through, and going about 1/2 inch and going back down. Because this stitch is going to come out after we're done with the machine stitch, don't worry about being too exact with the measurements. We're going to go about 1/2 inch, go down, pull tight. You don't want to pull it so tight that it puckers up. You just want it to be tight enough that it lays flat. For the purpose of this, I'm going to flip the fabric over, but while you're stitching, you can always just use your fingers to feel out how large. So you're going to flip it over, go about 1/2 inch from where we came out, go back in, flip back over, and pull through. And then you're going to go about 1/2 inch, go in, pull through, go about 1/2 inch in the back, come up, pull through. See how big these stitches are? They're quite loose. Feel free to make markings or anything on your fabric with a washable marking tool if you need help finding the 1/2 inch mark or staying at a consistent length from the edge of your fabric. So we're going to go our final 1/2 inch, and then to finish it off, you're just going to do a few small stitches at the end to secure it but you don't want to make too many small stitches that it's going to be hard to come out. So we're only going to make 2 or 3. So we're going to come up from the back, fairly close to where we just came out. Make sure that it stays nice and loose. And then you're going to go back in, not too far from there. And then I'm going to go back in one more time. And there you have it. You see that we have a few small stitches with our big stitches. Laying nice and flat. And then I'm going to go ahead and stick my needle in my pin cushion and cut off the end. And then you are ready to machine stitch. The next stitch we're going to be talking about is the overcast stitch. The overcast stitch is used to keep fabrics from raveling. It is done along the row or cut edge of a fabric. An overcast stitch is considered a seam finish. It's usually done through 1 layer of fabric, but can be done through 2. The stitch should be about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the fabric, and stitches should be about 1/4 of an inch apart. You're going to get your fabric ready, press and pin, needle. This stitch is going to be a little bit more tedious than others that we have done, but we're going to learn how to do it together. We're going to start about 1/8 of an inch down, come up through the fabric, pull, and then you're going to want to go to the back and go about 1/4 of an inch over from that last stitch and pull through. And then you're going to go, same thing, go to the back, go to about 1/4 of an inch from that last stitch, pull that through. You want to make sure that your stitches are sitting nicely, not too tight, and not so loose that they move around when you touch it. So we're going to continue with this all the way down. And then when we get to this end, we're going to do about 3 overlapping stitches. And then you are done. Now let's recap all of our different hand stitches that we covered. We covered the slant hem, which is a hem stitch. We covered the invisible and the slip stitch. Invisible stitch being a closer stitch and slip stitch being a longer stitch. Slip stitch is a hem stitch, and invisible stitch is used to hold folds or edges together. Next we talked about the base stitch. The base stitch is used to hold 2 or more pieces of fabric together until they are machine stitched. Then we talked about the overcast stitch. The overcast stitch is used to keep fabrics from raveling and is done along the row or cut edge. These are all of our different hand stitching styles. If you have questions, feel free to contact the Franklin County Fashion Board at the email that is posted on the screen. Have a great day!